Hotel, hotel, hotel. Welcome in, everybody. Make sure you hit that like button when you come in the building. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's very important. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure that you hit that notification bell so that you can be alerted whenever I go live or whenever I post a new video. Okay, so if you don't mind, give me just a second to make sure that I have my audio and my visual looking good, and then we're going to get into the video. Okay, look, y'all see the title. Today we're going to be talking about, was hoodoo created in Africa or America? I'm going to say it again. Was hoodoo created in Africa or America? Now, why am I doing this video? I'm doing this video because lately I've been doing a series about hoodoo. And I've been teaching about hoodoo. I've been teaching about conjure. I've been teaching about root work from a historical perspective of what it is, where it comes from, and who created it, where it was created, and what did it mean to our ancestors. Now, since I've been doing this video, I've noticed a lot of confusion coming up, and and a lot of disagreements coming up, which is fine. Is quite all right to disagree. It's quite all right to have a different understanding. And whenever these things come up, we should sit down and have an intelligent discussion about this. Now, I have been teaching, and I will continue to teach, that hoodoo was created in America on the slave plantation by our ancestors who were enslaved. And there has been multiple people who are asserting that, in fact, hoodoo was created in Africa and it was brought from Africa to the Americas by our enslaved ancestors. Now, I fully understand why they say that. And the logic and the reasoning that they are using on the surface level, it makes sense. It makes sense. However, I still have to teach that hoodoo itself, hoodoo was created in America on the slave plantation by our ancestors who were enslaved. And I've been responding to a lot of comments asserting this fact and explaining this fact, but sometimes things are lost in translation when you're commenting, when you're texting, when you're writing things, and you can't fully explain your position. So what I wanted to do a video, and I wanted to properly address this title so that whether you agree with me or not, you will fully understand and grasp why I am saying that hoodoo was created in America, although some of the practices, ideas, concepts were brought from Africa to the Americas with our enslaved ancestors. Okay, so what we're going to do again, we're going to be dealing with the question: was hoodoo created in Africa or America? And my position is hoodoo was created in America by our enslaved ancestors. And I'm going to explain to you why I teach that. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will understand my position a little better. So the first thing that I want to do, hold on, give me just a second. The first thing that I want to do, let me see. Okay. Let me get that screen share back up. Go back to my presentation. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do, and like I always like to do, I like to start off with something basic and easy to understand, and we're going to get into the more complex information. Okay, we're going to start off with basic Wikipedia. Then we're going to get into some primary sources, and I'm going to break down my explanation of why hoodoo comes from America. But first and foremost, right off the bat, whenever you look up what hoodoo is, this is the basic information that you're going to get. Okay, hoodoo is a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs that were created by enslaved African Americans in the southern United States from various traditional African spiritualities and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. Traditional African spirituality and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. It says, as a syncretic spiritual system, it also incorporates beliefs from Islam brought over by enslaved West African Muslims and spiritualism. Scholars define hoodoo as a folk religion. It is a syncretic religion between two or more cultural religions, in this case being African indigenous spirituality and Abrahamic religion. Many hoodoo traditions draw from the beliefs of the Bakongo people of Central Africa. We got our first comment. R. Lewis says, showing love from Houston, my bro. Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. I don't know if you know, but I'm right here in Texas City. So I'm right up the road from you. Texas City down here by Galveston, Texas. I'm from Texas City, Texas. Shout out to you. Thanks for tapping in. So look, right off enslaved African Americans. Now, I know that's not enough to end the debate, but that's a good starting point. And it also tells us that hoodoo is a mixture of various traditional African spiritualities. There's some Islam mixed in. There's some Christianity, some Judaism mixed in, to create what we're calling hoodoo. So I want to ask you something right off the bat. If there are multiple African traditional spiritualities that are mixed in to create hoodoo, which one is it? Which African system is it? Now, you may say that regardless of which African system it is, it may be multiple African systems that influenced it, but it's still African. Okay. What about how it's telling you that it also incorporates beliefs from Islam and other Abrahamic religions, such as Christianity? I'm going to show you some of the primaries. Okay, if it's African because it's African spiritualities involved in it, is it Arab because Islam is involved in it? Is it Greek or Jewish because Christianity and Judaism is involved in it? No. So it has to be something else. It has to be something else, and I'm going to prove it to you. But the first step, if you look up what hoodoo is, the scholars themselves will immediately tell you that it was created in America. And I'm going to explain why they say that. Now, this is why I understand the people that say it was created in Africa. I understand your position. Because when we look at some of the primaries, our ancestors understood that a lot of the concepts they definitely brought from Africa with them. No one is denying that. Check this out. This is from the Georgia slave narratives, aka the oral histories of our ancestors. Ancestor Rhea's body. Now, she was actually enslaved. Look what she says about hoodoo. Among the very old slaves whom he knew as a boy were quite a few whom the Negroes looked up to, respected, and feared as witches, wizards, and magic workers. Those are the people who are practicing hoodoo, being able to conjure, the root workers. They're calling them wizards, witches, and magic workers. These either brought their learning with them from Africa or absorbed it from their immediate African forebears. So immediately we see in the primary sources that our ancestors, they don't hide the fact that a lot of this information and some of the basis for some of this information came directly from Africa. They brought this over from Africa with them. Nobody is denying that fact. And so when people analyze the spiritual system or the religion of Hoodoo, and they come to the understanding that some of this learning, as the ancestor says, the ancestors brought this from Africa with them, or they absorbed it from their immediate African forebears, their mothers, fathers, grandfathers, and grandmothers who were directly from Africa. They go bingo. Well, Hoodoo was created in Africa. They created Hoodoo in Africa, and then they brought Africa over with them to the slave plantation. That's the thought process that an individual is bringing to the table. And so that is the thought process that I'm going to deal with. But first, I want to point out, when I say that Hoodoo was created in Africa, I am by no means ignoring or denying the fact that it is heavily influenced by spiritual traditions and systems and rituals that were developed in Africa. I'm not denying that. Stay with me. I'm gonna make this make sense. The first thing that I want to point out, again, moving forward, I want you to understand something. During the slave trade, our ancestors came from multiple locations in Africa. They all weren't the same. And although some of their spiritual and religious practices may have been similar, they were not the same either. We had ancestors coming from Senegal, Sierra Leone, the Congo, Angola, the area that we're calling Nigeria today, the area on the map that's now known as Liberia, okay? All over Western Central Africa. And not only around Western Central Africa, we even had African tribes who were going into the heart of Africa and waging war on African tribes that were not their tribes, and African nations that were not their nation, capturing them, bringing them to the coast, selling them to the European so that the European could bring them to the Americas and enslave them. You also had on the slave plantation Native Americans, what they call Indians or indigenous people. They were actually enslaved on those plantations right with our ancestors. You also had individuals from South America who didn't come from Africa that were enslaved on the plantation. So in essence, what you have is you have multiple African tribes, multiple African nations, several South American peoples, tribes, nations, cultures, several North American tribes, nations, cultures, peoples, all mixed in together on those slave plantations and dominated by European powers. And not just one European power. You had the Portuguese, you had the British, you had the French. Okay, you had multiple European powers, multiple African tribes and nations, multiple South American tribes and nations, multiple North American tribes and nations, all mixed together into a melting pot. And what I'm going to show you, what the scholars is saying, is elements from all of these different people groups came together in one location. And from these different people coming together in this one location, a spiritual tradition began to take shape. And this spiritual tradition, it did not only have ideas from Africa, it also had ideas from Europe, whether we like it or not. It had ideas from Arabia, whether we like it or not. It had ideas from the area that we're calling Israel today, whether we like it or not. It had ideas from South America and North America as well. Remember, the Wikipedia article told us that it Hoodoo includes knowledge of indigenous botanical knowledge. Indigenous botanical knowledge is knowledge that the Native Americans had because they were already here. They knew what roots did what herbs did what plants did what. And so our ancestors picked up on all of this. And so it was an amalgamation of ideas and an amalgamation of people that created the system that we're calling Hoodoo. Now, where did all of these ideas come together and form something new? All of these ideas came together and formed something new in America on the slave plantation. Okay? We have to understand that point. Now let's move on a little further. I want to show you guys something. Now, I'm going to show you how this worked with our ancestors. But trust me, we're going to dig deep into this thing, real deep. I'm just getting warmed up. Stay with me. Now, this is from the Texas slave narratives, aka the oral histories of Texas. And this is an interview with an ancestor named William Adams. He was actually enslaved. So this is what we call a primary source. Now, this guy practiced hoodoo. They say in here that he believed that he had supernatural powers. He believed in the occult. He believed in magic. He believed in the root work. He believed in omens. He talks about all of this stuff. Primary information. Now, he also says some things that I'm gonna point out to make you really consider the question: was hoodoo created in Africa or was hoodoo created in the Americas? Because we seem to think that simply because hoodoo has elements of African spirituality in it, then we must say that hoodoo was created in Africa. And hoodoo itself, hoodoo came from Africa because it has elements of African spirituality in it. Well, let me challenge that logic just a little bit. I want to challenge that logic just a little bit. Here's a practitioner of hoodoo. Okay, here's a practitioner of hoodoo. His name is William Adams, and he was interviewed. Let's see what he had to say. This hoodoo practitioner. Okay, look, he says, you wants to know and talk about the power the people tells you I has, the power of the conjurer or the power of the root worker, the hoodoo power, because he's being interviewed. So he says, well, sit down here right there in that chair before we start. I get some ice water and then we can discuss the subject. I want to explain it clearly so you can understand. Oh, we got Nash Money TV in the building. Say, make sure y'all hit that like button on y'all way in. It's free. Definitely. Man, is that my boy Nash from Austin? Is that my boy Nash, man? Shout out to you, man. If it is, shout out to you if it ain't, man. But if it is, good to see you in the building, fam. It's definitely free. Don't cost you a dime. So look, check this out. Let's go down the way it starts talking about the hoodoo. He says, there's a lot of folks and educated ones too, what says we believes in superstition. Well, it's because they don't understand. Remember, the Lord in some of his ways can be mysterious. The Bible says so. Now stop right there. This guy's talking about superstition. He's talking about the occult. He's talking about omens. He's talking about root work. He's talking about hoodoo, right? But in talking about hoodoo, he says that the Lord in some of his ways can be mysterious. The Bible says so. So what he's quoting the Bible. And the Lord in the Bible, you're either talking about Jesus or you're talking about Yahweh if you're talking about the Bible. and he's referring to him as Lord, and he's quoting the Bible, right? So how is he employing the Bible with hoodoo if hoodoo was created in Africa and it's only African spirituality and it's not something new? The Bible wasn't written in Africa, right? In Africa, they didn't conceive of the concept of calling Jesus or Yahweh the Lord. That came from the people in Judea, or what we're calling Israel today. So logically, if you see elements of African spirituality in hoodoo, and you say that means hoodoo was created in Africa, then you're in a catch-22, because now you see them using the Bible to describe what they believe and calling biblical characters the Lord. So does that mean that hoodoo was created in Israel? Does that mean that we can find hoodoo in the pages of the Bible? Was it created by Jews? Was it created by Christians? Of course not. Look, he says there are some things the Lord wants all folks to know. Some things just the chosen few to know, and some things no one should know. Now, just because you don't know about some of the Lord's laws, tain't superstition if some other person understands and believes in such. So obviously now he has some other form of Christianity going on in his mind, or some other form of understanding of the Bible in his mind, because in the Bible, superstition is evil. But he's readily mixing superstition with the Bible, which the Bible itself would condemn. So are we now going to say that is hoodoo a denomination of Christianity? Do you have Baptist, Protestant, Catholic, Mormon, and hoodoo? Of course not. Hoodoo isn't a branch of Christianity, but what hoodoo is what I showed you in the beginning. It is an amalgamation of ideas from Africa, Europe, Arabia, Israel, South America, North America, an amalgamation of ideas that came together to form something new on the slave plantation. And you have elements of several things that predated hoodoo in the understanding of hoodoo. But hoodoo is neither the things that preceded it, or it would be several things at once. Hoodoo is its own thing. Look, he says there is some born to sing, some born to preach, and some born to know the signs. He's saying that this is a fundamental idea of hoodoo. There is some born to sing, some born to preach, and some born to know the signs. He's basically quoting something out of the Bible in the New Testament, if you've ever read the Bible. But let's just hone in on this preaching. Preaching is an African spirituality. Preaching is a Christian thing. Yet again, Christianity would say that hoodoo is devil worship. So how is he able to mix the two? Because hoodoo is neither traditional African spirituality from Africa, and is not Christianity, is something new. Check this out. He says there is some born under the power of the devil. We all know where the devil come from. The devil is a concept from the Jewish Bible, the Torah, Tanakh, and Christianity. And he says, and they have the power to put injury and misery on people, and some born under the power of the Lord for to do good and overcome the evil. We're talking about good and bad conjuring. But what I want to do, I want to scroll down, and then we're going to get into the meat of the video. Look, he also says, it am also true of the colored folks in Africa, they native land. Some of the folks laughs at their beliefs and says it am superstition, but it am knowing how the Lord reveals his laws. So there's no denial of the African influence on hoodoo, but hoodoo itself was created using things that preceded it. Remember that point. Now I'm going to show you one more thing, and I'm going to move on. Now this guy's talking about hoodoo, right? This guy's talking about hoodoo. Was hoodoo created in Africa or in America? Hold on just a second. I see we got some we got a few comments. Hoodoo Haven commenting a lot. I probably can't read them all. Ethiopia has the oldest Bible. given to them by some Moorish merchants. So essentially, they could have came into contact with that version of Christian. There are many versions of that religion that predates King James and all that foolishness. Okay, I kind of see what he's saying. Some Bibles even talk about UFOs and okay, yeah, this brother going out. This brother going out. Watch, just pay attention to what I'm finna show you later on in the video. Okay, Nash Money say, yep, this me, brother. I knew this was your calling, bro. You're too intelligent and have too much knowledge to keep it to yourself. Love and respect. Man, appreciate that, fam. Appreciate that, fam. And again, good to see you. Good to see you in the building. Now, look, talking about hoodoo again. He says about special persons being chosen for to show the power, read, use Bible. It says in the book of Mark, 3rd chapter, and he ordained 12 that they should be with him, that he might send them forth to preach and to have the power to heal the sick and to cast out devils. And down a little further, he says, and in the 5th chapter of James, it further say, if any am sick, let him call the elders. So it's obvious that an element of hoodoo is amalgamated with biblical thought, right? Now, the logic that I'm addressing is that because there's African spirituality in hoodoo, then people are telling me that we must say that hoodoo was created in Africa. Well, hold on. There's also elements of Christianity in hoodoo. So was it created in Africa or was it created in Judea? Right? Was it created by the Africans or was it created by the Jew? Because he's quoting the Bible. The Africans didn't write the Bible. The Jews did. Africans didn't start Christianity. The Jews did. And he's directly quoting the Bible. So what you have to understand, and this is going to get us into the meat of the matter. This is going to get us into the meat of the matter. Pay attention. All religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded them. Every single one. I'm going to say it again. All religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded them. What am I saying? Just because elements of hoodoo have connections to traditions that preceded it does not mean that hoodoo is not its own thing and something new. Why? Because all religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded them. However, we have no problem saying that Islam is its own religion, Christianity is its own religion, Judaism is its own religion, Buddhism is its own religion, Hinduism is its own religion, Egyptian religion is its own religion, although they have ties to things that preceded them, just like hoodoo has ties to things that preceded them. What I'm not going to allow people to overlook is that, no, our ancestors, while enslaved on the plantation, managed to do something that only a few cultures were able to do in all of human history. They were able to create a spiritual system that aided them in the situation that they were in. And although I respect the fact that they got a lot of the traditions and ideas from Africa, yeah, they did. But I'm not going to say that in Africa they created the thing called hoodoo. I'm not going to take that away from our ancestors. They created hoodoo on the slave plantation as a means to deal with the situation that they were in. That's why it has elements of the Abrahamic faith in it. It ain't because they learned about Christianity in Africa. It's because the slave master was Christian and they all were forced to go to church. They were all forced to go to church and they were punished if they tried to practice their own spiritual traditions. So some of them, they were forced They were forced to call God by a name that the Christian would accept. They were forced to learn verses out of the Bible, and they utilized those names in the Bible. They utilized those verses in the Bible to explain their own spiritual traditions. And it evolved and it morphed and it became something new. So although hoodoo has connections to spiritual traditions that preceded, hoodoo is its own thing, and it was created in America by the ancestors who were enslaved. Now that I've laid that foundation, let's prove it. Let's prove it. Now watch this. Let's start off with Islam. Origin of Islam. They say that the origins of Islam was around 610 CE. Now, we're not going to debate the dates or anything like that, but they are basically saying that Islam is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion centered on the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad, the religion's founder. Listen, Muslims believe that Islam is the complete and universal version of a primordial faith that was revealed many times through earlier prophets and messengers, including Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. In fact, Muhammad said that he got his revelation from the Quran in a cave from an angel that a Christian told him was the angel Gabriel, the same angel Gabriel that's mentioned in the Bible. So hold on. You mean to tell me that the Muslims can look you in your eye, tell you that their prophet got a revelation from a biblical angel, and he revealed to them the same thing that he revealed to Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, but you're not going to look at the Muslim and tell the Muslim, oh, Islam ain't it's not a religion. It's not its own religion. That wasn't created by Muhammad. Islam was created by Jesus. It might as well be Christianity. Islam might as well be Judaism. How can Islam claim to be its own religion if it literally quotes the same stuff that came in the books prior to it? How and why? Because every religion has ties to things that came before it. So hoodoo has connections to African spirituality and other traditions, but hoodoo is its own thing. Just like Islam has connections to religions and prophets and books that precede it, but it's its own thing. The Muslim is not the Christian. The Muslim is not the Jew. We know this. The Jew is not the Muslim. The Christian is not the Muslim. We know this. And even though they all claim to have the same prophets, and they claim to have the same God, and they claim that they got their revelation from the exact same place, we understand that Islam, as the religion itself, was created with Muhammad around 610 CE, 610 of the Common Era. This is, nobody can dispute this. Now, in the religion, they say that the religion of Islam goes all the way back to the beginning, and they say that Islam was the religion of Abraham. But the only problem with that is that in the original text that mentioned Abraham, Abraham doesn't say he was a Muslim. Adam doesn't say he was a Muslim. Noah doesn't say he was a Muslim. Moses doesn't say he was a Muslim and he followed Islam. Jesus doesn't say he was a Muslim and he followed Islam. Islam is putting that on them people. So they are openly connecting themselves to something that came before them, but we understand Islam is something new. Remember what I told you. All religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded them. So I'm going to ask you a question. Was Islam created by Muhammad in around 610 CE? Yes. Yes. Or was Islam created by Jesus? No. Was Islam created by Moses? No. Was Islam created by Abraham, Noah, Adam? No. So was Hoodoo created in Africa or America? Ask yourself that question. Let's take a look at the Quran. Let's look at some of these verses in the Quran. Check this out, family. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 35. And we said, O Adam, dwell, you and your wife, in paradise, and eat therefrom in ease and abundance, from wherever you will. But do not approach this tree, lest you be among the wrongdoers. So we see the Quran talking about Adam and his wife in paradise and being forbidden from eating from a specific tree. Where have we heard this story before? We've heard this story from the Bible. The Bible in Genesis tells about someone named Adam and Eve. God created them in the paradise, the Garden of Eden. And God told them that you can eat of any fruit that you want, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, do not touch it, because in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. So we have the same characters, the same story about a tree in the Quran. And really the Quran, it doesn't try to hide the fact it took this story directly from the Bible and put it in the Quran. And so now this is a part of Islam. Now I want to ask you something, because the Quran is talking about Adam, his wife, paradise, and the tree. Is the Quran the Bible? Is the Quran the Torah? Is the Quran the Tanakh? No. Was Islam created by the person who wrote the story of Adam and Eve? No. Even though they quote the story of Adam and Eve, Islam was not created by the person that originally told that story. Now they taken from this story wholesale, and they're putting it in their religion. And we understand when any scholar talks about this, they say that there are three major world religions, and they call them Abrahamic religions or Abrahamic traditions. But they're three separate religions: Judaism or Yahwism, Christianity, and Islam. All talking about the same people, all talking about the same events, all purporting to talk about the same God, but different religions. So let's say if I'm doing hoodoo, right? And let's say if in hoodoo, I talk about conjuring and I talk about root work. And then I look in Africa and I see someone talking about conjure and I talk about root work. Does that mean that hoodoo itself, because it has similarities to what I'm seeing in Africa, and even getting it, that part of it directly from Africa, does that make it one in the same religion, one in the same spiritual system? No, because if that was the case, then the Quran talking about Adam and Eve in paradise and the tree would literally make the Quran the Bible. But no one says that. In fact, Muslims say that, you know, the Bible is tampered with. They have the correct version of events. And when you look back in history, Jews, Christians, Muslims been going to war for thousands of years. Well, not multiple thousands, but you get what I'm saying. Over 1,000 years, they have had several wars. They know they disagree. They know they disagree, but the Quran is taking wholesale from the Bible. But Islam is the Muslims get to say that, oh, Muhammad is our prophet. He created our religion in Arabia. But then they say that religion is tied back to something ancient. But if it comes from Muhammad, then we know Muhammad was in Arabia. We know what time he was there. We know what he was doing. We know when the Quran was written. Boom, we can put a date on it. Now, if you want to say that it is connected to something older than it, that's fine. Why? Because all religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded it. Not just Hoodoo, not just Islam. Look at this. Surah al-Baqarah, ayat 136. Say, O believers. We have, hold on, let me see. Ethiopia has one of the oldest Bibles. That's fine. Jews, Christians, and Muslims. One religion, three sects of the same ancestor, reverence. Yeah, Montegator, that's what you say. That's what you say. But Islam is a religion. Christian, okay, the Christian calls Jesus God. If a Muslim says that God has a partner, they need to have their head cut off. Diametrically opposed. You cannot say what a Christian says as a Muslim. You just can't do it. It's not just a different sect. They say that because every religion and spiritual tradition connects to something that preceded it. They are all religions grow out of things that preceded it. But that does not take away from the fact that they are something new. As I go further, we're going to drive this point home. Sandra Askew says, good morning, Ampu. Have a wonderful day. Hey, good morning to you as well. You have a good day. You have a good day as well. Yeah, you say that they three different sects, but even in Islam, you got Shia, and you got Sunni, you got Shia. You got some that believe in some hadiths and other Muslims that believe in other hadiths. So even in Islam, all Islam isn't uniform. They all don't believe and teach the same thing. They all don't have the same hadiths. When you talk about Christianity, again, you got Baptists, you got Protestants, you got Catholics, you got the Eastern Orthodox Church. Even with all Christians, they don't even all believe the same thing. So it's not really three sects. It's infinity number of sects, because within each of those religions, they not different sects, they different religions. Everybody knows this, but it's the fact that they grew out of a religion that preceded it, and they used what preceded it to validate themselves. That's why it's hard for an individual to make the distinction. But we all know Islam, if you look it up, three major world religions: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. The Jew is not going to tell you they're a Christian and a Muslim. The Christian is not going to tell you they're a Muslim and a Jew. The Muslim is not going to tell you that they are Christian. They just not going to do it. They just not going to do it. And this, I'm not attacking you. We're just talking. That sounds good, but that's not reality. Look what the Quran says. Say, O believers, we have believed in Allah. What Jew prays to Allah? What Christian prays to Allah? We have believed in Allah and what has been revealed to us and what has been revealed to Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the descendants, and what was given to Moses and Jesus and what was given to the prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between any of them, and we are Muslims in submission to him. Pause right there. So if they really make no distinction between any of them, why aren't they Christians? Why aren't they Christians? Why aren't they Catholic? They might as well be a Catholic then. You make no distinction. Why not be a Catholic? Why not be a Protestant? Why not be a Jew? Why do you need a whole new book? If you believe in them other books, why don't you just grab them books and move on? Because they're saying that because all new religions have a connection to something that existed prior to this. Look, they say we make no distinction between any of them, and we are Muslims in submission to him. Well, the Christian believes that Jesus is God. The Jew don't believe that Jesus is God. The Muslim don't believe that Jesus is God. The Christian believes that Jesus died for their sins. The Muslim doesn't even believe that Jesus died for anybody's sins. And as a matter of fact, they said that it wasn't even Jesus on the cross. So technically, they do make a distinction, and they don't believe everything that was revealed prior to the Quran. And you know how they get around that? Instead of just saying they don't believe, they say, oh, it was tampered with. That's not what it said at first. It was tampered with. Well, you got something different here, buddy. You got something different here, buddy. But you're building your religion. You're talking about Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and Jacob. And the crazy part about that, in the Bible, yes, Ishmael had a promise to be a great nation, right? However, it didn't go Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and Jacob. No, it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You want to know why the Quran is including Ishmael? Because they believe that Muhammad and the Arabs descend from Ishmael. But when you read the Bible itself, whenever the Bible talks about their ancestors, they say, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why? Because the promise that the Bible is standing on went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Israel/Jacob had the 12 sons. Those 12 sons became the 12 tribes. Why is the Quran including Ishmael? Yeah, he had a promise to be a great nation, but he wasn't the promised seed. He wasn't the promised seed. So even in a subtle way, we know that they're twisting the story to fit their needs, which is okay. But we know that there's something different, and there is a distinction. We see it plain as day. See, what happens is you can look at a religion from a historical perspective, and you can look at a religion from what the religion says about itself. And those are two different things. I'm going to say it again. You can look at a religion from a historical perspective, and you can look at a religion from what the religion says about itself. And a lot of times you're going to get two different versions of events. Let's go further. I'm going to further show you that all world religions take from something that came before it. Look what they say. Indeed, this is Surah Al-Imran, ayat 33. Indeed, Allah chose Adam and Noah and the family of Abraham and the family of Imran over the world. Now, again, slight difference. Because if you ask a Christian and a Jew, they're going, wait a minute. Allah didn't choose Abraham. No, they're going to say it was Yahweh. It was Yahweh who told Abraham to leave his native country in Ur of the Chaldees, and go to a land that he would show him. It was Yahweh that told Abraham to sacrifice his son. It was Yahweh that made the covenant with Abraham. That's who the Bible purports that it was. Right? And I know it may be something with the language. I get that when you're talking about Allah, but we just have to be honest. You don't see Allah in the Bible. Closest you can get is Elohim or El. But even when you go to the crazy part, even when you go to El and you try to make some kind of language connection between El and Allah, El is a Canaanite god. El is a Canaanite god, because the Israelites lied about their history too. It just is what it is. In the historical record, the people that were calling Israelites in the ancient days, they were just regular Canaanites, and they were worshiping Canaanite gods. That's why their name is Israel and not Israel Yahweh. Israel. El is a Canaanite god. They have statues of El. Now, yes, people can play linguistic gymnastics and say this is that, whatever. But you can't even tie Allah into El, because if you tie Allah into El, really you're talking about a Canaanite god. And then if you tie Allah into any form of Elohim, a human being can be Elohim. A human being can't be Allah. A human being can be Elohim. A human being can be Allah. And there is scholarship out saying that Allah is connected to a moon deity. Because remember, before Muhammad had the Quran revealed to him, the Arabs were just as pagan as everybody else. And he brought this revelation to clean them up. But we even see the Quran claiming that their God, Allah, chose Abraham. So, okay, well, if he chose Abraham, why are you talking about Ishmael? Because the promise that we seen in the Bible went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. Why are you including Ishmael? I'll tell you why. Because Islam is a new religion, a new spiritual system that has connections to traditions which preceded it, just like every single religion on the planet. Now look at this. Surah Baqarah, Ayat 47. The translation reads, O children of Israel, remember my favor that I have bestowed upon you and that I preferred you over the worlds. Now pay attention. O you children of Israel. Israel is Jacob. Jacob had his name changed to Israel. Israel had 12 sons who were the 12 tribes. Now, this Allah in the Quran is saying, children of Israel, remember my favor that I bestowed upon you and that I preferred you over the worlds. Repeating what the Bible said about the children of Israel being chosen. Right? But why earlier in the other ayat they include Ishmael? If the children of Israel being Jacob, was preferred over the worlds. You see what I'm saying? It's a new religion. Obviously, it's a new religion. Obviously, it's a new religion, but it has connections to something that preceded it. Right? Yeah, they review. You're supposed to reveal your ancestors. All right. So look, was Islam created in Judea? They talking about all of the people that they was talking about in Judea. Was it created by Jesus, Moses, or Abraham? Really think about what I'm asking you. Was Islam, with those surahs and ayahs I just showed you, was Islam created in Judea? Was it created by Jesus, Moses, or Abraham? Is Islam and Christianity the same thing? Is Islam and Judaism or Yahwism the same thing? No, 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 and no. It come from Muhammad in around 610 CE. Period. Period. Now, the book ties it back to something previous. That's what the book says. But the historical record says something different. So even though the Quran can take wholesale from biblical literature, it's something different. So was Hoodoo created in Africa, or was Hoodoo created in the Americas? Although they have similarities, and although Hoodoo gets things from Africa, Europe, South America, and North America, was Hoodoo created in Africa or was it created in America? You have to zoom out and really grasp what I'm saying. Let's go further. Let's talk about Christianity. We want to hit these major religions. Look, again, Christianity, the origins of Christianity, ask any scholar, they're going to tell you is in the 1st century CE. And Christianity is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion based on the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, even that's propaganda, because they believe in the Trinity, 3 gods in one. But since they want to tie it into Judaism, something that came before it, they got to keep calling it monotheistic. Look, Christians believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, whose coming as the Messiah was prophesied in the Hebrew Bible, called the Old Testament in Christianity and chronicled in the New Testament. Christianity began in the 1st century after the birth of Jesus as a Judaic sect with Hellenistic influence in the Roman province of Judea. So the God in Christianity is the same God in Judaism. They have the same prophets. Originally, their Messiah followed the same laws. And they say Jesus, their Messiah, their God, was prophesied in the Old Testament. But is Christianity Judaism and Yahwism? Was Christianity founded by Moses, Abraham, Noah, Adam, Isaiah? Did any of those dudes create Christianity? Absolutely not. Even though Christianity also has ties, direct ties to something that came before it, Christianity is something new, and Christianity is its own thing. Now, how can something be new with connections to something old? Simple. All religions, all spiritual traditions have connections to something that came before it. Okay? So Christianity came in the 1st century, right? Before Islam was created. Now, it's making some of the same claims. It's trying to claim the same people in the Bible. Let's look at some of these Bible verses pertaining to Christianity. Look, Romans 5:14-15. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned, after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come. But not as the offense, so also is the free gift. For if through the offense of one many be dead, much more the grace of God and the gift by grace, which is by one man, Jesus Christ, hath abounded unto many. So we see the same pattern that the Quran used. The New Testament is mentioning Adam, Moses, and when they're talking about the Adam's transgression, they're talking about Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, in the Christian mind, when Adam ate of the fruit, sin entered the world. And all men, women, from that point on, was condemned to death and eternal separation from God. This is the Christian doctrine. And it was because Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came, paid the sin offering. He paid the price. He shed his blood. He paid the price. He died for the sins of the world. Now, all men can be saved if they believe in Jesus Christ. Now get this. This is deep. The Quran also talked about Adam and that transgression. But the Muslim does not believe that Jesus died for your sins. They don't even believe that Jesus was crucified on the cross. They believe that it was somebody else made to look like Jesus. So now they're both talking about this Adam character that they got from the Tanakh. They're both talking about this Garden of Eden. They're both talking about this transgression, eating of the fruit. But then, in order to suit their own individual religious ideas, they come to a different conclusion and a different end for what that Adam story actually meant. They reconfigured it right before your very eyes. They started with, Adam, Eve, Garden of Eden, eating of the fruit, and then boom, they slowly took the feeder road. They were on the highway, then they took the feeder road. And once they took the feeder road and they got off the highway, it was like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. This ain't Judaism no more. This is Christianity. Whoa, wait a minute. This ain't Christianity anymore. This is Islam. Because the Quran just said that they believe this stuff that was revealed to the prophets and revealed to Jesus. Now, the Christian says the prophets spoke of Jesus dying for the sins of the world. So they even have a different understanding, a different conceptualization of what the prophecies actually meant. Why? Because they were starting their own religion, but they were using the religions that preceded it in order to lay the foundation. Look, in the Bible, in Matthew, they even have a genealogy of Jesus, right? They have a genealogy of Jesus. And they call him the son of David, the son of Abraham. I mean, they literally, and you have one that goes all the way back to Adam. But in this one, in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, they go from Abraham all the way to Jesus. So they are literally connecting themselves directly to this guy Abraham again. So I got a question for you. The Tanakh is not one book. Think about what I'm finna say. The Tanakh is not one book. You got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah. You got all of these books. I mean, Malachi. You got all of these different books, right? Spanning hundreds of years between the authors, right? You got multiple prophets, Isaiah, Hosea, Obadiah. You got scribes, Ezra, Nehemiah. You got prophets, Jeremiah. You got Moses. You got all of these different characters. You got all of these different books. Now, with all of these different books, guess what? It all stayed the same religion. It was still Yahwism. It was still Judaism. So what happened if these Christians, now I know they connected the books at some point, but they were not supposed to connect the books. But if all of this was still the same, why didn't the rabbis, the Jewish rabbis, when they roll out their Torah scrolls and when they break out their Tanakh, why didn't they include Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Because they still have Torah scrolls. They still have Tanakhs in the synagogues. Why didn't they add Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? You know who added Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Catholics, Christians. They said, oh, this is the same as that. This is a continuation of that. But the people who practice that, Judaism, Yahwism, they said, no, it's not. Them ain't our books. Those are your books. And why do the scholars say that Christianity began in the 1st century? If Jesus is tying itself back to Abraham, why didn't Christianity start with Abraham? Why don't the scholars say that? People are saying that hoodoo was created in Africa. Why can't I say that hoodoo was created in America? Because there's some ties within hoodoo that ties back to the continent of Africa. So because of that, I can't say, and scholars can't say, that hoodoo was created in America. But you got a whole Islam that the scholars say was created in 610 that literally talk about Abraham. You got Jesus, who literally says he's a descendant of Abraham, and he was actually a Jew. But we understand Christianity began in the 1st century. Why didn't it begin with Abraham? Why didn't it begin with Moses? Why didn't it begin with Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hosea, Obadiah. Why didn't Christianity begin with them? And did Christianity begin with them? No, you have to say no, because Christianity is predicated upon the God Jesus. So without Jesus, there could be no Christianity. Without Muhammad, there could be no Islam. So we got a date. And we see that something changed in the fundamental belief of Christianity and Judaism that became Islam. We see that something changed in the fundamental belief of Judaism and Yahwism that became Christianity. And so from a historical perspective, we realize we have three different religions, three different origin dates. Now zoom out. With Hoodoo, yes, Hoodoo has ties to Africa, but it also has ties to Europe. I told you they quote the Bible, this same Bible right here. They quote it. It also has ties to South America. Hoodoo also has ties to North America. Indigenous botanical knowledge. They actually learned some of the stuff that they knew, some of the root work that they knew how to practice in America. They learned from some of the natives. Hoodoo isn't all magic. It's medicinal. They were making medicines to heal. All of the plants that grow in America don't grow in Africa. Right? So some of this stuff that they were taught by the indigenous people, and they did what? They implemented it into what we're calling Hoodoo. So Hoodoo wasn't created in Africa, and it wasn't created by Native Americans. It wasn't created by the European. It was created by the ancestors that were enslaved. Let's go a little further. Let's look at Matthew chapter 27, verse 6 through 9. And the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, it is not lawful for to put them into the treasury, because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Wherefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy, that's Jeremiah, the prophet, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value. So now they're again in the New Testament, they tied Jesus and what happened to Jesus, they tie it in with biblical prophecy. But we understand that it's something new. Why? Because all religions have a connection to something that came before it. So the question arises, was Christianity created at Mount Sinai? Was it created by Moses, Abraham, Adam, or Isaiah? Is Christianity the same thing as Judaism and Yahwism? No. So is Christianity created was Hoodoo created in Africa or America? And is Hoodoo and any one particular traditional African spiritual system the same? No. Similar? Yes. Same? No. We can even do the same thing with Judaism. Right? The origins of Judaism was around the 5th or 6th century BCE. The Bible wasn't written when the religion tells you that it was written. That's another hard pill to swallow. I'm going to say it again. The Bible was not written when the Bible tells you that it was written. Okay? Judaism is an Abrahamic monotheistic ethnic religion that comprises the collective spiritual, cultural, and legal traditions of the Jewish people. Judaism evolved from Yahwism, an ancient Semitic religion of the late Bronze Age to early Iron Age, likely around the 6th, 5th century BCE. So Islam is connected to something. Christianity is connected to something. Judaism itself is connected to something. Why? Because when you look at it from a historical perspective, the ancient Israelites didn't believe what the Bible tells you that they believe. They believed in multiple gods. They was hedonistic. They believed in multiple gods, but they just started to saying that Yahweh was the supreme. Again, that's why their name is Israel. The scholars are starting to admit this now. And so what we're calling Judaism, with the highest God being Yahwism, with the highest God being Yahweh, that began around the 6th, 5th century BCE. How can scholars put dates to these things? And how are they saying that Judaism evolved from Yahwism? Can religions evolve? They do it all the time. They do it all the time. So what is this Yahwism that they're talking about? Yahwism, as it is called by modern scholars, was the religion of ancient Israel and Judah. Yahwism underwent several redevelopments and recontextualizations as the notion of divinities aside from or comparable to Yahweh was gradually degraded by new religious currents and ideas. By the end of the Babylonian captivity, Yahwism began turning away from polytheism. Okay? So the Bible was not written when they told you it was written. And the story of the Israelite people that you find in the Bible is not historically accurate. The picture that the scholars are describing now is that the ancient Israelite people, right, they were hedonistic. They believed in multiple gods. You even have artifacts like the one that's on your screen, right? That's the shard of a pithos found at Kuntalit Arjud in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, bearing the inscription Yahweh and his Asherah. Yahweh had a wife. To the ancient Israelites, Yahweh had a wife. Now, what happened was these ancient Israelites in history, they acknowledged multiple gods. But their national god, their God, was Yahweh. But these other gods to them existed. That's why the Bible talks about how the Israelite people they were chosen by Yahweh, as in every people had their God. Their God was Yahweh, but other gods existed. Now, as time moved on, these Israelites, they eventually got well, not all of them, but some of them got taken into captivity into Babylon. They learned more about other religions, Canaanite religions, Babylonian religions, Persian religions. And when they were released from Babylonian captivity by the Persian king Cyrus, then they began to write the Bible. That's why they have not found any copies of the Bible dating back to the time when the Bible says that it was written. The Bible says that, King David in 1000 BCE had the Torah. Show us a copy of the Torah that goes back to 1000 BCE. They can't do it because they didn't have one. And so after they came out of this Babylonian captivity is when they began to write the Bible. And they backtracked their history to talk about their origins. And at that time, the people that began to do the writing, they were the ones who constructed the narrative like Yahweh was the only God. He was the supreme God. Every other God was fake. Yahweh, 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 to push their narrative. Although their ancestors always worshipped other gods. And you even see a glimpse of this in the Bible because they'll say that, their ancestors turned away from Yahweh to worship other gods. They weren't turning away from Yahweh. They just always believed that those other gods existed. And sometimes they worship one God, sometimes they worship another God, sometimes they worship this God, sometimes they worship another God. And even in the Bible, I'm going to show you, even in the Bible, you have what? You have a connection with religions and spiritual traditions that preceded the writing of the Bible. Look at this. Let me get a drink of my coffee. Okay. This artifact is hold on just a second. Let me stop sharing for just a second, and then we're gonna pick right back up. We're gonna pick right back up. Okay, present, share screen, boom, boom, boom. Okay, now look, check this out. This artifact is in the British Museum, and is known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, this story was copied on several different tablets it was copied over and over and over many different centuries and millennia. Now, this story was written in around 2100 BCE, right? This is over 1,000 years before the Bible was written. Now, look what the curator's comments of the British Museum says. They said this object is the single most famous cuneiform text and caused a sensation when its context was first read in the 19th century because of its similarity to the flood story in the book of Genesis. Baked clay tablet inscribed with the Babylonian account of the flood. So remember, the narrative, all religions and spiritual traditions are connected to something that came before it. We went from Islam back to Christianity, from Christianity back to Judaism, from Judaism back to Yahwism. Now I'm going to finish show you a Babylonian influence on the Bible itself. Stories taking wholesale. And I'm going to ask the question, if the Bible has Babylonian stories in it, is Judaism and Yahwism, is that its own religion, or is it just Babylonian religion warmed over? Was it created in Babylon? If they're taking stories from Babylon, is what we're calling Yahwism and Judaism, is it really Babylonian religion? Is this where it was created because it has a connection to something that existed prior to it? Now, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, basically Gilgamesh is like the hero of the story. Now, long story short, Gilgamesh wants to be immortal. He wants to live forever. His best friend died. That made him think about his mortality. So he wanted to figure out how to become immortal and live forever. Now, in order to figure out how to live forever, Gilgamesh decides to go and talk to the only man who ever gained immortality from the gods, a man named Utnapishtim. Now, Utnapishtim, get this, gained his immortality from the gods by surviving a great flood. Now, it's not just the fact that it's a great flood that makes it similar to the Bible. It's the story itself. The Bible changes the name Utnapishtim to Noah, but the story itself in Genesis is an obvious retelling of this Babylonian flood account. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at these two stories. And it's going to be clear. If you've never seen this before, we are about to make it clear that the Bible took wholesale from other people's religions to create its own. Now look at the right. On the right, I have the Epic of Gilgamesh. On the left, I have the book of Genesis from the Hebrew Bible. Now, we're going to go right to the highlighted part in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Look what it says. I will reveal to you, remember, Gilgamesh is talking to Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim spoke to Gilgamesh, saying, I will reveal to you, Gilgamesh, a thing that is hidden, a secret of the gods I will tell you. Shuruppak, a city that you surely know, situated on the banks of the Euphrates, that city was very old, and there were gods inside of it. The hearts of the great gods moved them to inflict the flood. Let's stop right there. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, we have Utnapishtim telling the story of the flood that he survived. And he tells us about a city that was very old and that there were gods inside of it. And then the heart of the great God moved to inflict the flood, to bring a flood down on earth. Now look at the Bible story. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 through 7. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men and bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. So in the biblical version of this flood story, you have the sons of God having children with the daughters of men. And these became mighty men, which were of old and men of renown. And so this situation made man to be extremely wicked, and it grieved God at his heart. And so God decided, because his heart was grieved, that he would destroy man from the face of the earth, both man and beast, with a flood. Now again, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I will reveal to you, Gilgamesh, a thing that is hidden, a secret of the gods I will tell you. Shuruppak, a city that you surely know, situated on the banks of the Euphrates, that city was very old, and there were gods inside it. The hearts of the great gods moved them to inflict the flood. So we see a area, right? That a city, we see that is very old. We see gods are inside of it, and we see the heart of the great God move to inflict the flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And in the Bible, we see the sons of God in a city having babies. And we see that this grieving the heart of God, the head God, and him deciding to destroy everything with a great flood. Let's go further in the Epic of Gilgamesh. O man of Shuruppak, son of Umbartutu, tear down the house and build a boat, abandon wealth and seek living beings, spurn possessions and keep alive living beings, make all living beings go up into the boat which you are to build. Its dimensions must measure equal to each other, its length must correspond to its width, roof it over with Apsu. So now we have the gods telling the man to build a boat because they are going to bring a flood. And he's saying that on this boat, he is to bring all living beings, all living creatures. And then the God tells him the dimensions which the boat must be. Now look at the Bible. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, and of every living thing of all flesh, two of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. So in both stories, again, you have the God instructing the man to build the boat, the God telling the man the specific dimensions to build the boat, the God telling the man also to bring all living things onto the boat with him to keep them alive so that they will survive the flood. Let's go further. In the story, both individuals, Noah and Utnapishtim, they build the boat. The flood waters come. They're on the flood for a certain amount of time. Then guess what happens? In the Epic of Gilgamesh, look what it says. On Mount Nemush, the boat lodged firm. So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, after the flood, the boat came to rest on a mountain. And it's saying on Mount Nemush. Let's look at the Bible. And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. So now in both stories, the boat and the ark comes to rest on a mountain. Let's go further. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it says, I opened a vent and fresh air daylight fell upon the side of my nose. In the Bible, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. So now we have both stories. We have the flood, we have the boat coming to rest on a mountain, and we have Utnapishtim, and we have Noah both opening a vent or opening a window on the ark. Let's go further. What do they do after the boat has come to rest on a mountain and after they have opened the window? Well, let's see what happened in the Babylonians' tale. It says, when a 7th day arrived, I sent forth a dove and released it. The dove went off and came back to me. No perch was visible, so it circled back to me. So Utnapishtim says he releases a dove out of the window of his boat. The dove flies around and comes back because there's nowhere to land. What does Noah do? Noah, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Right? So he sends out a raven. Now look, after Utnapishtim sends off the dove, what does he say? I sent forth a swallow and released it. The swallow went off, but came back to me. No perch was visible, so it circled back to me. What does Noah do after he sent off the raven? Also, he sent forth the dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark. So now they've both sent off two birds, and the two birds don't have anywhere to land because the water has not receded. So what does Utnapishtim do after sending off two birds? I sent forth a raven and released it. The raven went off and saw the waters slither back. It eats, it scratches, it bobs, but does not circle back to me. Noah, and it says, and he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. So you see, both characters sent off 3 birds. And it's even a similarity in Utnapishtim. He sends off a dove, a swallow, and a raven. Noah sends off a raven and a dove, and then another dove. So even the types of birds are the same, except for the swallow. Right? Now check this out. Let's go a little further. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, what does he do after he sends off the birds and the birds don't come back and he realizes the waters have abated? Utnapishtim, the Babylonian epic. Then I sent out everything in all directions and sacrificed a sheep. I offered incense in front of the mountain ziggurat. 7 and 7 quart vessels I put in place, and into the fire underneath, or into the bowls, I poured reeds, cedar, and myrtle. The gods smelled the savor. The gods smelled the sweet savor and collected like flies over a sheep sacrifice. So, Utnapishtim in the Babylonian tale leaves off the boat, lets everything off the boat. Then he makes a sacrifice to God in front of the mountain. And when he makes the sacrifice, they say that the gods smelled the savor, the gods smelled the sweet savor. So what happens with Noah? And every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. Like this is like straight plagiarism. So you mean to tell me Noah too built a sacrifice? Built an altar and made a sacrifice, and God smelled it, and it was a sweet savor? And this Babylonian tale says the exact same thing. So we have a man being warned by God of a flood, being told to build a boat, being told the dimensions of the boat, being told to bring all living animals on the boat with him, the boat landing on a mountain, the man opening a window, the man releasing 3 birds to see if the waters have receded. When the 2 of the birds, they're both doves and they're both ravens. When the water recedes, he let everything off the boat. Then the man builds an altar. Then the man burns a sacrifice. He makes a sacrifice to God. The God smelled the sacrifice, and it is a literal sweet savor in both stories. Now, again, the Epic of Gilgamesh from 2100 BCE. The Bible story from about, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 500 BCE. So we're talking about a 1,500-year difference. And remember, the Bible was written after the Babylonian captivity. So after you guys were captive in Babylon, you come out and you write a book that has this Babylonian story in it, but you change the names and you change some of the details to make it fit the narrative that you're trying to create. So it's obvious, even in the writing of the text, Judaism and Yahwism has connections to the Babylonian religion because you literally took some of their stories wholesale, right? But they didn't just take stories. They also took the law, right? They also took the law. Look at this real quick. This comes from the Torah.com. Torah.com. How Exodus revises the laws of Hammurabi. The author of the covenant collection in Exodus knew the laws of Hammurabi and revised them to fit with Israelite legal and ethical conceptions. This is clear when we compare their laws of assault in each. So we have the Torah.com telling us that whoever wrote these laws in the book of Exodus knew the laws of Hammurabi, and they simply revised the laws of Hammurabi to create their legal code. They didn't get it. Moses didn't get it from God on Mount Sinai. That's just not true. That's not true. They took their laws from laws that existed prior to them, because all world religions do this. Now, what is the code of Hammurabi? What are the laws of Hammurabi, and when were they written? The code of Hammurabi was written around 1795 BCE, before the Common Era. This is about 1,200 years before the Exodus story was written. I'm going to say it again. Around 1,200 years before the Exodus story was written. Look, the Code of Hammurabi was a set of 282 laws inscribed in stone by the Babylonian king Hammurabi, 1795 to 1750, who conquered and then ruled ancient Mesopotamia. Although his law code was not the first, it was the most clearly defined and influenced the laws of other cultures. One of those cultures that the Code of Hammurabi influenced was the Israelite culture. And again, this is in Babylonia. The same Babylon who had the flood story that the Bible took also has laws that the Bible took and reworked. Why? Because all religions and all spiritual traditions have connections to things that existed prior to them. Remember, the Israelites historically were held captive in Babylon. They were released after King Cyrus invaded Babylon and defeated King Nabonidus. So this is how the Israelites, and maybe from some other sources, but this is how the Israelites knew these stories in Babylon. This is how they knew these laws in Babylon and were able to incorporate them into their religious text. Look what it says. The laws address business contracts and proper prices for goods, as well as family and criminal law. Every crime inscribed on the stele is followed by the punishment to be inflicted. No one could claim they were ignorant of the law, as the over 7 foot tall stele was erected publicly. At the top, it was engraved with an image of Shamash, the god of justice, handing the laws to Hammurabi. And the following text makes clear that these are laws of the gods, not arbitrary rules created by mortals. Even that aspect of it was adopted by the Israelites, because they say that their laws that Moses got came directly from God. But they're saying that because they were copying the Code of Hammurabi, and the Code of Hammurabi said that those laws came from God. And so they made a story where Moses went up on a mountain and talked to God face to face, and with the finger of God's own hand, he wrote on 2 stone tablets. Okay? We just have to understand this stuff historically. Not saying that the Israelites didn't have any laws of their own. Yeah, they had some laws that were unique to them. Some. But what I'm pointing out is that biblical stories, biblical characters, and biblical laws were taken wholesale from religions that preceded it. So does that make the religion of the Israelites Babylonian religion if they're taking their laws? If they're taking their stories? No, because all religions take from something that preceded it, just like Hoodoo. But let's look at some examples, because I know you don't believe me. Or maybe you do, but I don't want you to believe me, right? Let's look at a few comparisons between the Code of Hammurabi or the laws of Hammurabi and the laws in the Bible. Now look, the Code of Hammurabi says, if a man strikes a daughter of a man and he causes her to miscarry her fetus, he shall weigh out 10 shekels of silver for her fetus. If that woman dies, they shall kill his daughter. Now look at what the Bible says. If men struggle and they knock a pregnant woman and her fetus comes out, but the woman suffers no misfortune, he shall be fined as the husband of the woman exacts from him, and he shall pay for the fetus. If the woman does suffer misfortune, you shall pay life for life. So they're dealing with the exact same situation. If men struggling, men fighting, they hit a pregnant woman. If the woman has a miscarriage and the fetus dies, but the woman lives, they have to pay a fine. Both laws agree. Now, if the woman dies, then someone else has to die. The Code of Hammurabi says that they shall kill his daughter. And the law, the Bible law just says you shall pay life for life. So somebody is going to be doing some dying. Okay? An exact 1-for-1 between the Code of Hammurabi and the laws in the Bible. Now, the people who wrote the Bible, they knew this. They said that, now get this, they said that, oh, this law came from Yahweh on a mountain. And if this law really came from Yahweh on a mountain, why are the Babylonians saying that they got the exact same law from a god named Shamash over 1,200 years before they wrote a story about getting this same law from Moses? And ironically enough, immediately after the Israelites come out of a Babylonian captivity, they come out of a Babylonian captivity telling Babylonian flood stories, Babylonian Tower of Babel stories, having Babylonian ideas of blessings and curses if you violate the God, and having Babylonian laws. That's real strange. That's real strange. Let's look at a few more. In the Code of Hammurabi, it deals with the context of an individual being gored by an ox and what should happen. And it's strange, or it's interesting, because in the Code of Hammurabi on your right, it gives a law about if the ox gores somebody while just passing through the street and kill him. It gives a law for if a man's ox is a habitual gorer, it gores several people. And it gives a law if the ox actually gores a slave. Now in the Bible, it gives a law if an ox gores a man or a woman. It gives a law if an ox is a habitual gorer. And it gives a law if the ox gores a male slave or a female slave. Right? It deals with the exact same topics. Now, the punishment for the laws are somewhat different, but they all involve either not being held accountable, right? Like look at the Bible. The Bible says if an ox gores a man or a woman and he dies, the ox shall be stoned. Its flesh shall not be eaten. The owner of the ox is not liable. Now that's an accidental goring. If an ox gores somebody and there's nothing you can do about it, you really can't control what an animal does, then they're going to kill the ox, but the owner is not liable. That's what the Bible says. Now, the Code of Hammurabi says, if an ox gores a owlum while passing, that's a non-slave, while passing through the street and kills him, that case has no claim. So again, if an ox just randomly gores somebody, both laws agree that the owner is not liable. Now, in the Bible, let's talk about a habitual gorer from previous experience. And its owner has been warned and he did not restrain it, and it kills a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned and its owner shall be put to death. If ransom is laid upon him, he shall pay the redemption price for his life according to whatever is laid upon him. Or if it gores a son or a daughter, it shall be done for him according to the law. So if the ox is a habitual gorer, saying it has killed multiple people, and you knew that this ox had a habit of killing people, then the owner of the ox should be killed because he didn't control this out of control ox. Or if the family of the person that the ox killed is willing, they can pay just like a fine, a redemptive price for the life. They can pay for the life that the ox took. Now let's look at the code of Hammurabi. If a man's ox is a habitual gorer and his district has informed him that it is an habitual gorer, but he did not foul its horns and did not control his ox, and that ox gores the son of an Alawam and kills him, he shall pay 1/2 mina, equal 30 shekels of silver. So this habitual gorer again can be fined now. Now he is liable and he can be fined. Although the Bible does change it somewhat and say that the individual, they can actually be killed. Then when the Bible talks about if the ox gores a slave, look, if the ox gores a male slave or a female slave, he shall pay 30 shekels of silver to the slave's master, and the ox shall be stoned. The law of Hammurabi, if it is the slave of an Awalam, he shall pay 1/3 mina, 20 shekels of silver. So in the law of Hammurabi, if it's a slave that's killed, you pay 20 shekels of silver. In the Bible, if it's a slave that's killed, you pay 30 shekels of silver. But it's the exact same thing. And the scholars understand at this point that a lot of these laws in the Bible come directly from the code of Hammurabi. Why? Because every religion, every spiritual tradition, every cultural norm has a connection to something that existed before it. Now, simply because we see a connection between the Bible laws and the Code of Hammurabi laws, can we now say that Hammurabi wrote the laws in the Bible? Are the laws in the Bible the Code of Hammurabi? Because there is similarities there, and obviously some of the laws come from there? No. In the same way, just because within Hoodoo we see a connection to African spiritual practices, we still have to accept that Hoodoo itself is something new. Just like we have to accept that the Bible is something new. Let's look at another similarity. Check this out. The Code of Hammurabi has another distinct law that I want you to pay attention to. It says, if a man strikes another man in a fight and injures him, that man shall swear, saying, I did not strike him with intent, and he shall pay the physician to heal the wound that he caused on a man. Now look at the Bible law. When men fight and one strikes his fellow with a stone or with a fist, and he, the latter, does not die, but takes to his bed, if he gets up and walks about outside on his staff, then the striker is absolved, but he must recompense him for his period of inactivity and provide the cure. So we're talking about, what do we do if two men get into a fight and one man injures the other man? The law of Hammurabi says, okay, if you wound a man in a fight, you have to at least pay his medical bills. You got to pay the physician to heal him. The Bible says if two men get into a fight and one wounds the other one, but he doesn't die, then the one who wounded him has to pay for his period of inactivity and provide for his cure, basically paying the physician to cure him. They're dealing with the exact same situation, and we're seeing a similarity between how they describe the situation, the consequences of the situation, and the punishment. And all these things match up. So it's obvious to the scholars that some of these laws in the Bible are directly from the Code of Hammurabi. Let's go just a little bit further just to drive the point home. Now, in the Bible, there's a common phrase that a lot of people use: an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We all have probably said it. It's found in Exodus chapter 21, verse 24 through 27. Look what it says: eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And if a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. So we see an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot. These for two regular citizens. And we see a different law for the slaves. Now, in the law of Hammurabi, it says, if an awolum, a free man, blinds the eye of a member of the awolum class, they shall blind his eye. If he breaks the bone of an awolum, they shall break his bone. If an awolum knocks out the tooth of an awolum of the same rank, they shall knock out his tooth. So 1,200 years before the Exodus was written, the laws of Hammurabi said that if somebody blinds somebody, then they got to get blinded in one eye. If they knock out the tooth of somebody, then one of their teeth got to get knocked out. Literally an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And we can see that there's a different punishment if you do it to a slave. Now, in the law of Hammurabi, if you do it to a slave, then you have to pay a fine. Now, in the Bible code, if you do it to a slave, then that slave gets to go free. But we do see in both cases, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And we see a different code for the slaves. There's no way around it. The law of Hammurabi, the Bible laws in Exodus, some of them come from the laws of Hammurabi. So we can ask ourselves, because of this connection to Babylonia, Mesopotamia, was Judaism and Yahwism created in Mesopotamia? Were the laws in the Bible created by King Hammurabi? Is Judaism and Yahwism the same thing as Mesopotamian or Babylonian religion? No. So was Hoodoo, even though it has similarities and a connection to what was going on in Africa, was Hoodoo created in Africa or America? Was it created on the plantation or in Africa? In America, on the plantation, is something new. Every religious system, family, has a connection to a spiritual system that preceded it. Every last one. Hoodoo is no exception. And so what I'm saying is, because Hoodoo has a connection to something that preceded it, does not mean Hoodoo is that thing that preceded it. If that was the case, since the laws in the Bible have a connection to the laws of Hammurabi, we would have to say that the laws in the Bible are the laws of Hammurabi. but nobody says that. But it's not just the Bible. I can do this with Buddhism too. Look, the origin of Buddhism is the 5th century BCE. I really want to drive this point home. Buddhism, also known as Buddha Dharma or Dharma Vinaya, is an Indian religion and philosophical tradition based on the teachings attributed to the Buddha, a wandering teacher who lived in the 6th or 5th century BCE. So, is Buddhism its own religion? Yes. Was Buddhism created in the 5th century BCE? Yes. Is Buddhism based on the teachings of the Buddha? Yes. Does Buddhism have connections to a religion or a spiritual tradition that preceded it? Yes. So even though it has a connection to something that preceded it, it's still its own thing. Check this out. The historical Buddha is a man named Siddhartha Gautama. Sorry if I butchered that name to anybody that practices this. Now look, they say Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, lived from around 563 to 483 BCE. Now, this guy, Buddha, was, according to legend, a Hindu priest who renounced his position and wealth to seek enlightenment as a spiritual ascetic, attained his goal, and in preaching his path to others, founded Buddhism in India in the 6th to 5th centuries BCE. So he wasn't born a Buddhist because he created it. According to the legend, he was a Hindu priest. He was born a Hindu. And he renounced his lifestyle to seek enlightenment. And in seeking enlightenment, he created his own religion, his own philosophy. Now, the philosophy that he quote unquote created, is any parts of it still connected to Hinduism? Yes. Let's look at it. Similar concepts. This is similar concepts between Hinduism and Buddhism. Look, in both religions, you will come across similar vocabulary such as samsara, the cycle of rebirth, karma, cause and effect, or dharma, moral order. Samsara refers to the endless cycle of birth and death. Both Hinduism and Buddhism see life as a cycle, which means that spirits are continually reincarnated into a new life and after the end of their previous one. This cycle can only be broken by achieving enlightenment. For Buddhists, enlightenment is referred to as attaining nirvana, while for Hindus, this is referred to as moksha, or becoming one with Brahman, the supreme God. The concept of enlightenment is similar in the two religions, but they differ on the path towards achieving it. So yes, there are differences, but yes, there are similarities. Now, do those similarities make them the same thing? Is Buddhism Hinduism? No, Buddhism is Buddhism, Hinduism is Hinduism. Right? Now, there is similarities between Hoodoo and African spirituality, but there are also differences. So does that make them the same because they have similarities? No, they are not the same. Hoodoo was not created in Africa, although it has connections to Africa. Just like Buddhism was not created when Hinduism was created. It was created when the Buddha created it. Another similar thing between the two, similar symbolism between Buddhism and Hinduism. Apart from similar concepts, there are similar symbols that occur in both Hinduism and Buddhism, including mudra and dharma chakra. Mudra is a system of symbolic hand gestures with meanings, often used during meditation. Buddha is often portrayed using these hand gestures in statues or paintings. Mudra is commonly practiced in both Hinduism and Buddhism, but the positions, meanings, and uses are different. So the Buddhists took something that already existed in Hinduism and it changed it slightly to make it something new. Dharma chakra is a symbol common to Hinduism and Buddhism that look like a ship's steering wheel. The wheel appears in India's national flag as well as the Thai royal family's flag. It is also called the wheel of law. The number of spokes varies, but 8 is most common, representing the eightfold path teaching for Buddhists. Dharma chakra commonly appears on Hindu temple walls as well, particularly in temples of the sun god Shura. So they have similar symbolism. They have similar hand gestures. They both use meditation. They both have special positions with meanings attached to them. But does that make them the same because they are similar? Absolutely not. They also have similar practices. On the surface, you may notice that Hindus and Buddhists share a few common practices such as meditation and the use of mantras. A mantra is the utterance of syllables or words in a melodic way, which is believed to have spiritual power and can bring the person to a higher spiritual awareness. Hindus use mantras during rituals while worshiping gods. They also use it while praying. In Buddhism, mantra is more used as a meditation exercise to help the mind focus on certain things and let go of attachments. So they both use meditation and mantras. They both use similar symbolism. They both use similar hand gestures. And they both are seeking a path to enlightenment. And they both believe in the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. So with all of these similarities, even with the Buddha himself being born as a Hindu priest, then you're seeing these similarities. Does that make Buddhism and Hinduism the same thing? No. Just like you can have an individual from Africa who learn African traditional spirituality, have children in America who learns an amalgamation of traditions from Africa, Europe, South America, North America, and then utilizes some of the same concepts, words, titles for God as these systems that came before it, but uses it in a new way for a new reason. That individual having claim to a new religious or spiritual system. You see, we can't deny the fact that our ancestors on the plantation created something new using things that came before it, because everybody does it. Every world religion does it. You know, every world religion has done it. I think it's just difficult for some people mentally to accept that our ancestors, while they were enslaved, created something of so monumental importance as a spiritual tradition. Like, no, they couldn't have created anything. They didn't. It's like we don't want to give them credit for creating anything. Oh no, they didn't create nothing. They everything they got from somebody else. Well, name me one religion that didn't get something from somebody else. Name me one. If I had time, I would go through every religion that we know. But I don't have that time. But I'm making this extensive because I want to touch on the major religions that we know. Name one. I showed you that Islam took from things that came before it. Christianity took from things that came before it. Judaism took from things that came before it. Yahwism took from things that came before it. Buddhism took from things that came before it. And now I'm finna show you that Egypt took from things that came before it. Right? I'm gonna just skip over that. Look at this. This is from the Egyptian Museum. And this is something that's called the normal palette. Now, the normal palette was created around 3000 BCE. And what the normal palette is, it is a historical document that is depicting the creation of what we're calling Egypt or Kemet, the country, the nation. So when we talk about Egyptian religion, we're talking about the religion of the people in Egypt. Egypt being the name that they're using for the country Kemet or Taseri, Tameri, the beloved land. But for the sake of making the conversation easy, we'll just call it Egypt. So Norma is purported to be the first pharaoh of Egypt. He unified the lands and created the nation that we now know of today as Egypt. Right? So when we talk about Egyptian religion, we're talking about the religion of the people of the nation that this guy founded. Now, the normal palette created in around 3000 BCE is a historical document depicting the creation of Egypt. And this is a historical document, and right now it's in the Egyptian Museum. Look, the normal palette, also known as Norma's Victory Palette and the Great Hierakonpolis Palette, is an Egyptian ceremonial engraving a little over 2 feet tall and shaped like a chevron shield, depicting the first dynasty king Norma conquering his enemies and uniting Upper and Lower Egypt. It features some of the earliest hieroglyphics found in Egypt and dates to 3200 to 3000 BCE. The palette is carved of a single piece of siltstone, commonly used for ceremonial tablets in the first dynastic period of Egypt. The fact that the palette is carved on both sides means that it was created for ceremonial instead of practical purposes. Palettes which were made for daily use were only decorated on one side. The normal palette is intricately carved to tell the story of King Norma's victory in battle and the approval of the gods at the unification of Egypt. Hold up. Wait a minute. What did you say? What did you say? The normal palette depicts his victory in battle and the approval of the gods? Whoa, 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 whoa. If the gods approved his victory in battle, and that victory in battle created Egypt, then the gods existed before Egypt. Look at the normal palette. Let's go back to this one. It's a little better picture. Look at the normal palette. Look at the top. You see those two cow deities? That is perhaps the oldest image of Hathor, an Egyptian deity. You see right below the, look at the palette on the left, that side of it. The palette on the left and the cow figure on the right. Directly beneath that is a falcon with a hook inside the nose of one of the individuals that Norma is defeating. Now we know the falcon is associated with who? Heru or Horus. Heru. Heru is an Egyptian deity. Hathor, the cow, is an Egyptian deity. They are approving the gods that we're calling the gods of Egypt, are approving the victory and the creation of Egypt, meaning they existed prior to Egypt. And get this, Heru is the son of Asar and Aset. So if Heru is there, Asar and Aset is there, and that lends credibility to the story of the mythology existing, multiple gods existing. So even when we talk about Egyptian religion and we say, oh, in ancient Egypt or in ancient Kemet, this is what they believed and these are their gods, etc., etc., etc. Guess what? The gods that we recognize in Egypt, the stories that we recognize in Egypt about the gods and the relationship between man and the gods that's taught in Egyptian religion has a connection to something that existed before Egypt was even founded. So is it even Egyptian religion, or is it really Kemetic spirituality if it existed before Kemet existed? Or is it something else? Maybe we should call it pre-dynastic religion. Right? Nile Valley. Is it Nile Valley religion? Listen, every world religion, family, all world religions and spiritual traditions have connections. All religions and spiritual systems have connections to traditions which preceded them. All of them. So when we read comments from the ancestors talking about hoodoo, and they say that Negroes looked up to, respected, and feared as witches, wizards, and magic workers. These either brought their learning with them from Africa or absorbed it from their immediate African forebears. Our ancestors on the plantation who created hoodoo, getting information from African spirituality, is no different from the Egyptians getting spiritual information from pre-dynastic peoples. Is no different from Buddha getting spiritual information from Hindus. It's no different from Yahwism or Judaism getting spiritual information from the Babylonians and the Canaanites. It's no different from the Christians getting spiritual information from the Jews. It's no different from the Muslims and Islam getting spiritual information from the Christians and the Jews. Every world religion and spiritual tradition has ties to something that preceded it. But just because it has ties to something that preceded it does not mean it is not something new. So when we ask the question, was hoodoo created in Africa or America? I teach, and I will continue to teach, that hoodoo was created in America. Now, whatever aspects of African spirituality we find in hoodoo, whatever those spiritual practices are called in Africa, I'll give Africa its credit for whatever they created. Whatever spiritual tradition, whatever they created, they get credit for that. I'm not trying to take credit from them. But what I am doing, I'm making a distinction, and I'm holding our ancestors on the plantation up high. So was hoodoo created in Africa or America? It was 100% created in America. That's where it was created, although it has connections to things that preceded it. I hope you guys understand my position on that a little better. You don't have to agree, but that's why I teach it how I teach it. So everybody that stayed through the whole video, I appreciate you sticking with me. I appreciate you listening to the teaching. I appreciate everybody that commented in the chat. Thanks for tapping in. Listen, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure you hit that bell so that you can get a notification whenever I go live or whenever I drop a new video. So with that, I'm about to tap out. I just wanted to answer that question. I'll probably be dealing with this a little more, but we'll see how the comments go. So thank you for tapping in. This is your brother Matthew Daniels. Hotep, shalom, peace, ashe. I'm out.